Yo, what's good in the web? This your man Q back again, and I'm doing something I promised. I said I was gonna do 165 days ago. I said, Quentin, even if it takes 4 separate videos, 10 bottles of water, and I can't think of anything else, I'm going to talk about my NES collection. I've had more than a few people on the Discord, IRL, other content creators, friends, y'all know, asking, Quentin, are you gonna do it? Geek, you gonna do it? And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna get around. So, without no further ado, we're gonna talk about my NES game collection. Yeah, they dusty. I need some cases. They're in no particular order because that's a lot of extra work I did not prep for. I said, you know what I'm gonna do is just get on here and look at, got the curl in the lip, and you know I'm serious. I'm gonna get on here and I'm gonna talk about some of the memories that are attached to some of the games, or what nostalgic things that I remember with particular games, and then we'll go from there. So the first game I want to talk about is one that I rented like a long time ago, and it's gonna be a lot of nostalgic moments. So, you know, some of y'all that were born in the 80s, early 90s, you're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about, or probably have seen some of this memorabilia or shows or things. First game is gonna be the MC Kids, and I really like the MC Kids. One of the things that I like the MC Kids for, most notably, which is, look at all the dirt on it, it was a black and Latino like main characters, and I didn't realize it at the time. This was during the, you know, during those times where you start to learn about the world and things at that time. And I always remember this was right around the time I was playing this game. I think it was like in 4th grade or something, and I remember I went through this phase where I'm painting all of my action figures black, G.I. Joes and He-Man, and I have to go through some of those one day, like a collection thing in the vault is what I call it, and show y'all that, because it was just, I went through a phase. I didn't understand why nobody looked like me, and I gravitated to this game because this is one of the reasons, is the main dude looked like me, and I like McDonald's. That was the fries before the supersized me with all the salt. The game was a standard type of game like all Nintendo games were back there. It was a platformer. You collect like these little MC coins or whatnot, and you're jumping up and down, and you gotta go to a different stage. I wanna say, if I can remember, it's almost been 30 years since I played that. And also, as a disclaimer, many of the games I haven't played in decades because I didn't have money like that as a kid, so I only had 2 or 3 games for years and years. So then when I started working, my first job was a paper route when I was like 12 years old. When I started working, it's one of my moms was like, I can't afford all these games, son. If you want them, you're going to take your little monies and do it. And ever since then, well, you know, that's where we're at now. The next 2 games are going to be Short Order and Egg Explosion, which I guess you could say is 3 games, and Hogan's Heroes. These were really fun games, especially if you had the Power Pad. Unfortunately, that got stolen from me, but the Power Pad, which is one of Nintendo's claim to fame, was also one of these things where they even have it on one of these right here. You can see it. The Power Pad was where you step on it and have like 8 or 9. It was kind of like the Dance Dance Revolution before Dance Dance Revolution. And then you would do different things where, that's why I said Nintendo with its novelties, where it was attempting to do like you're entering the game. They had my favorite one was the track and field one. The bad thing about it is when I got it at the time, I used to live upstairs, so that wasn't a good idea. Flintstones, actually one of my 6th or 7th favorite NES games. Not so much because I love the Flintstones, so much that the cartoon took a new thing during that time. Hanna-Barbera made these new cartoons in the early 90s, and back then you had an action figure and you had a game on the NES, because it was the Nintendo Entertainment System was the system to have. If this one you were with, I can't remember his Kazooie, the Green Martian, who basically kind of like introduced the Jetsons and and the Flintstones. If I'm not mistaken, it's been a while since I watched that too. And you had to go from world to world to world, from the future, from the past, and then present, and then different things, and meet different characters. You did end up meeting George Jetson and them in this game, and it had a lot of nostalgic feelings and things for me, because, you know, it's like a smell or a song or something. Just like with this next game, it instantly makes you remember when you see or you hear about the game, or I'm thinking about the stage. And Hoops was one of the first, other than Magic Johnson versus Larry Bird, which I sucked at sporty games and just sports in general when I was a kid. Not because I was bad, because I didn't know nothing. I just didn't know. I didn't have nobody be like, hey bro, this is with this is with this. But Hoops was one of the games that did kind of teach me a little, and I wasn't bad. I always knew I liked basketball, just knew then, yeah, like, you know, I sucked at this stuff, like Double Dribble, couldn't play it, Madden, no, Tecmo Bowl, I wasn't good at that. I played this at the Boys and Girls Club in, I want to say in the early 90s, and I that's my favorite basketball game for the regular Nintendo, because it brings back those memories of that. The Disney Adventures I remember renting. Disney made a lot of great games. Capcom doesn't do a lot of Disney games. Look at that. They don't do a lot of games as much as they used to do when it came to Disney, and I know it's a whole licensing thing, but along with the Mickey Mouse, the Tailspin, the Darkwing Duck, the Chippendale Rescue Rangers, DuckTales, those are just some of them. Aladdin's are later on the Super Nintendo and on the Genesis. They also had a series called The Magical Kingdom, and that's just named as some of them. And this one was like different 5 games in one. I never beat this. Most of the games I rented because while I couldn't afford games, like but a handful of games when I was coming up, my mom used to take me to the local Albertsons. Albertsons, it's your store. And they had a place where you could rent games there. And so she shop or get something, or we rent a movie. We rent one movie. I think it was a movie for me, it was a movie for her, and I rent a game where I could like choose. And that would basically be the weekend. These were one of those games. And since it had 5 games in one, I was excited about it. I always remember getting stuck on this roller coaster part when it came to that game. Most of the games, again, since I couldn't afford them back in the day, I said, I remember that game was fun. So here we are today. Now remember this game probably was the most fast action paced game that this was the Konami's claim to fame, was that Contra. The most, I don't remember, up, down, B, down, 100. I don't remember the actual code. I think I only did it a few times, but my uncle knew it. My uncle Rod, he had a Nintendo before me, way before me, because, you know, he grown, and I think I first was introduced to Nintendo, I was like 4 or 5, but I was too little to play, and then my uncle, my older cousins, they wouldn't let me, you know, play on the system. I didn't get a chance to like really game until I was like maybe 5, 6, I guess, around that. And I didn't get my own system until I was 6 or 7, and my grandmother ended up getting for me. I think that was like, I think I got my first Nintendo in 87 or 88, if I'm not mistaken. I remember my favorite Christmas to this day, because I went to my grandmother's house. It was a whole bunch of presents laying around with everything, and most of them for me. I got a turtle van, and I got Shredder's Cadillac, which I don't have the Cadillac anymore. I took the turtle van apart. And then I got a regular Nintendo, and the regular Nintendo came with the Zapper, which over here is the original Zapper. Well, it's not the gray one, but my original Zapper, the orange one, which works for those games over there with Duck Hunt and stuff. And I remember my grandmother asked my mom what I wanted, and that's what I ended up getting. But Contra was one of those games that I remember watching, and many of y'all have these moments where you forced to watch somebody play a game, and either they don't let you play it, or you know. One of my favorite games also, and still haven't beat it, and for those of y'all who've played, and this is what we used to do back in the day too, write your name on it, look how, so people would know that it was your game when you borrowed it or something. The original Ninja Turtles, this was not like the arcade game, which we was hoping it was gonna be. I always remember doing really decent in the game and then getting to that part where you expand on the whole world map. For those y'all that played this game, you know what I'm talking about. You get to this part and then it's like the difficulty spikes, and then you're going into these platforming parts of these squids and these giant things jumping out, and it's crazy because I'm a kid and I got ran over by a damn truck. I rented this game probably for a good month and some change. You know, when somebody else didn't have it, and didn't get nowhere on it. I don't even know why I bought it. Because I like the turtles. One of my favorite series, cartoons, underrated, where they got the idea, look it up, word on the web is, sources too, one of the ideas that they based, Nintendo based Star Fox on was Bucky O'Hare, which was a comic and later became a cartoon conveniently around the same time that the first Star Fox dropped when they had the FX chip. Matter of fact, this came out in like 89, 90, and many of y'all may have heard me sing the song in another dimension, another time and space, a parallel universe is falling on his face. Great game. It really was like a Star Fox Final Fantasy. You go from planet to planet to planet, and even though it had no JRPG elements into it, the reason why I said it was like a Final Fantasy is because you have 4 different planets. Each one was a different color, and they had their own element. And then you had to go and get parts and pieces and stuff from that. So I guess you could say if the gameplay was more like a Mega Man or a Metroidvania type of game, and pairing that with the cartoon and the action figures, I'm telling y'all how these 90s and these 80s used to do, folks. Woo! This here was the second Nintendo game I've ever got. I got this in 1991, 90 something. No, might have been a little, no, it wasn't 91. It's like 88, 89. And I remember it's like $15. It was at a secondhand store. I was looking at it. My mom was like, "You want it?" I was like, "I want it." Now the whole thing shows you how the graphics, everything goes now with tag team wrestling. The big thing was you can tag somebody. And I remember they had this dude who looked like Bret Hart but with long hair. He used to get on the top rope. Bow! Don't blame me for this next game. I don't keep my games is dusty, but I don't shove hammers through it. The Double Dragon game still works. But Double Dragon 2, which is somewhere over here, is actually my favorite with Billy and Tommy Lee. And then many of y'all know they made a movie and a spin-off of it, even though it was white dudes. Nobody was really talking about the Japanese. Okay, let's go! The next games I'm going to bring... the next game is going to be the Gold cartridge, Link's Awakening, which as a kid... excuse me. Yeah, don't y'all don't attack me. The Adventures of Link, which is still heralded today as quite possibly the hardest Zelda. This one I didn't get a chance to go and play too much into, is because it was too hard for me as a kid. I actually picked this up at a secondhand store. Believe it or not, I used to flip games before there was eBay. I used to go to this, I live in the valley, and these have like this thing called the Monday or Sunday sale and stuff. And what you used to do is I used to go and take my money from my paper route and stuff I used to do and buy a whole bunch of systems, a whole bunch of Sega systems, a whole bunch of regular Nintendo, the box ones, which I wish I would have kept now. Them jokers would have been worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then what I would do is flip them things, and then I would buy like the newer games and stuff. So I always been hustling these video games. Next game was Bugs Bunny's Crazy Castle. This was one of my favorite games. Bugs is one of my favorite cartoon characters, and this was a maze. I should have known I was gonna like JRPGs and mazes and games and things in that nature for a long time, because this was one of my favorite games. This is not like one of the other games which I like even more, which is Bugs Bunny's Birthday Blowout. Say that 5 times fast. This one was a maze, and this one was more difficult, and I think it had 100 levels. Once you get to a certain part, I mean, as a kid, and this is 2, 3 button controllers. This is like fancy things. We can look on the internet. One of my other favorite games was Skull and Crossbones. I always liked this game because not only did my grandmother buy me this game from another relic from KB Toys. I remember it because we were in the store. She said, "Quentin, do you want something?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they had a sale, and it was 3 for $30. And I picked this up along with Dragon Spirit and Solstice, which is probably coming up. This one I might like more. Well, I'm gonna say I like this more than Solstice because Solstice ended up being an RPG, which I'll get into later when that comes up. But this one was 1 or 2 players, and my mom used to play with me every now and again, you know, but I mean, it wasn't the same. You could be a red or a blue pirate, and you just go around and you shoot things, you throw the little knives at people, you can crouch, and then you go on like boats, and I think it had something to do with like some ghosts and something too. So it was kind of like a double dragon platformish 2-player game, and then you could take your other person's lives. It was cool. Iron Sword. I remember borrowing Iron Sword from a neighbor, and I ended up getting it from him, and I don't know, this isn't the one, but it could be that he just might have left this with me. This might be the one he might have left with me. And this one was the first game, even though this looks like Conan the Barbarian. What's that dude's name? Fazio. I don't know if that's him or not. But I really enjoyed this game because it was like just a castle, and you just had to scale up the castle, and you get magic and different abilities and stuff, and the whole premise was to go up and down, or up the castle, and the further you go up, the more enemies and more people and stuff you meet. If you're a retro person, you know. The next one, I ain't really got too much to say about ActRaiser. No, excuse me. I don't know, I thought this was an ActRaiser. Terra Prestadia, I think this is one of these games somebody gave me. So a few games somebody just gave me. I've never even played this one. So if anybody knows what this one is, it looks like one of the, that's what made me say ActRaiser. It looks like one of those games like the Space Invader games. Everybody knows about my baby Sammy. I found out about Samus being a woman way before a lot of people because I watched my uncle beat it. Again, from way back on them other ones. He didn't let me play, so I had to watch. And I remember when this woman took her helmet off, that didn't change my life, but I did know that Samus was a lady. I still wish she can go back to her OG hair, but you know, that ain't gonna happen. Final Fantasy. I didn't like Final Fantasy at first. Initially, I did not like Final Fantasy. One of my friends that I thought was a friend at the time used to have me come over. It's a common theme here, y'all. He used to have me come over his house. He had all the games, but I was like his only friend that kind of didn't use him for the games. I was just generally his friend, and he invited me to play his new games, right? I just got Sega. I just got the Genesis. You come over and want to play Sonic. This is the original Sonic, the 1990, 1991 Sonic, before Tails was included Sonic. And I get over his house because his mom stayed like close to my grandmother. So when I used to get babysat by my grandmother, I used to just be able to walk to his house. This is when you could actually let your kids and people walk outside with no fear. And he was playing Final Fantasy, and I didn't want to see Final Fantasy. I didn't want to go back on 8 bits. Damn it, I wanted to see the fastest hedgehog alive. And at that time, this was around the whole Saturday AM cartoon was coming in the works, and the Archie this was around that time where Sonic was hyped. Oh, Tetris is jealous. I was actually really interested in, I wasn't interested in this game. I was looking at the name. Somebody's name was written on it. I end up buying this at a yard sale for like 10, 15 bucks later on. I still haven't went back and beat the full first one, but everybody knows about the full first Final Fantasy game. It ain't really much to be said, is it? Well, okay, I guess there is something to be said. This was the game that almost ended a franchise in the making. If this game didn't work, Hanabaru Sakagaki and them boys at Square, not Square Soft or Square Enix at the time. At Square, the people who made the racing game Rad Racer, they was gonna go under. But this final project ended up being a success, and well, the rest is rest. They even end up buying their biggest competition later in like 01, 02, which was Dragon Quest that was made by Enix. Those two used to duke it out for forever and a day. And Tetris already let us know that they wanted part of the party. I didn't play this one too much on the NES. I played Tetris the most on the Game Boy. That was my favorite game, along with the Mario Lands, excuse me. That's where I was introduced to Daisy, like in 1989, 1990. And same thing with Wario around a little after that, from the black and white, the actual box Game Boy games. And then it was, what was it? It was two other games that I remember having for the Kirby and Castlevania. Those were the games. Friday the 13th scared the living shit out of me. This as a kid, because Freddy Krueger, which is the Nightmare on Elm Street, as well as Friday the 13th, were really scary movies. And this is where the height, before Saw just became a bloody mess and became a gore fest, there was actual scary movies. And on the game, Jason would do this shit where all of a sudden, look, I'm getting choked up already. All of a sudden, it would just black out. And then he'd just be there. Or then you walk out in the streets, and the streets were just quiet. Ask anybody who played this game back then. It ain't nothing now. But back in the day, oh, wasn't nothing scarier. Felix the cat, the wonderful, wonderful cat. Whenever he's in the fix, he digs into his magic bag of tricks. I didn't know about this. Felix the cat apparently was a cartoon my mom grew up with. And you can see this in Seen Better Days. And she ended up buying me the game later on. I think this was at Toys R Us. And the whole premise was, I actually like this game better than Mario. Felix, I forgot who his main enemy was, but he got his bag of tricks, and in his tricks he had a punching glove. He can jump extra high. I think he had an umbrella. He had all these different weapons and different things at his arsenal, and it was just your standard platformer game, but the enemies were a little more difficult than Mario were, in my opinion, and it was more cartoony. And I always remember this game because I got like really sick during like a holiday season. I couldn't go to school, and I think I had the flu, and this was what I played. And I mean, if you're gonna be sick, at least you could do is play some video games. Puss in Boots was, I got the game before the Puss in Boots on before the Puss in Boots on Shrek. There was a cartoon show that came on Nickelodeon years ago in the 80s, and it went like,
Hey, come along and join the fun. It's a time for fairy tales, magical kingdoms in the sun. Come along,
magic wish and something to come along. Puss in Boots was one of those stories on that cartoon block, also with Noah, the gnome, and that was after Maya the bee. See her jumping everywhere, buzzing here and buzzing there, saying catch me if you dare, busy buzzing everywhere. Okay, that's why I bought this. It was for nostalgic reasons. Fax and Do was a great RPG on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Sadly, for me, the time that I got it, I was playing Lufia, Earthbound, Secret of Mana, but I couldn't pass up picking up, which was an RPG for the NES. I always like to, you can see with the Japan, the old Nintendo symbol. It's just the nostalgics. This is my favorite regular 2D Mario game. Mario. Mario, Mario. That was a commercial they had like in the early, late 80s, I think 88. And this was around the time that everybody knows the whole famous meme.
Well, excuse me, princess.
The Mario brothers and those paisanos, they were around the same time that this game came out because Mario was on top of the world, literally on top of the world, and this game helped him secure that throne. This is also the game that introduced all his different move sets and introduced the Koopalings, which Bowser has a wife. Nobody talks about it. They didn't really talk about it too much on this game either, but they did explore it within the cartoon. But we did get Iggy, Ludwig, Wendy, which is my favorite. I also like Iggy and Ludwig, Roy, Norton, and was it Morton and Norton? So we did get all of his kids. No Bowser Jr. because he didn't come until way later, like 20 years later on Sunshine. But this is where most of a lot of the original Mario lore, with some of the stuff that we're still playing and dealing with today, came from. Because the original Mario Brothers 2 was really the lost levels that we later got for the Super Nintendo. When they bundled it with the SNES bundle, because that's how I ended up getting. I got like the second version of the Super Nintendo, and it was like the bundle. But the lost levels, which thank you Japan for not worried about how smart we are, but worried about we could buy it. Was they thought the game was gonna be too hard for us, so they scratched that game and gave us Doki Doki instead. Which Mario Brothers 2 is really Doki Doki, which is kind of like few, it looks like they're Arabian Night type characters, and they just put Mario, Toad, Peach, and Luigi in instead, which explains why that one is like one of these psychedelic trip dreams that Mario and company was having, because out of all the rest of the Marios, that Doki Doki Mario Brothers 2 is completely different. And then we're gonna finish today's half of the list up with Boy in the Blob. A homegirl just re-bought one for the Switch and sent me the link about it for the Switch, and it looks amazing. The Boy in the Blob is also the game I was playing around the time when I was sick with Felix the cat. And I remember a friend letting me borrow it, but this was in that day. I knew a lot of selfish friends, dang. Nobody shared their games. Like everybody, I mean, I got it, wanted me to just sit there and watch them play these games. Well, I'm still gaming. Where y'all at? Boy in the Blob was a very fun game. What I always remember about it is you've been able to do these different abilities from jumping and swimming and different. The blob would turn into different stuff that would help you within the game. And I think you had to feed him like jelly beans. And it was almost like, it felt like a mystery. All I always remember was the game was like, felt like it was 90% dark or nighttime all the time. But anyway, that's part one of my NES collection for the list. I have some of the best ones, my favorite ones to come. I won't make it a long time before I do another list, because I want to complete this one and then maybe go into 64 or even go into some of my RPG ones, which is my favorite ones, my favorite genre. But before that, I think I'll probably do like a what's my favorite RPGs list before I do something like that. But let me know in the comment section below. I said selection. Let me know in the comment section below, do you have any of these games? Do any of these retro games like bring you that happy, nostalgic feeling like it brings with me? Let me know. And if you're new to the channel and you like what you see, Nintendo RPGs, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It helps me out a lot. It lets YouTube know that y'all like the videos. And as always, in the web, remember to eat, sleep, geek, repeat. I'll holler at y'all on the next one. Peace. The longest time, I wasn't being legit or for real with myself either, because that was a part of me. And even though I was doing it in secret. And then it just hit me.
And that's when it hit me. And that's when I became a geek. Finally, the sleeper has awakened. I am the prince of all geeks, once again.